Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BFI Film Academy December Lab. My name is Alex, and I'm the Film Academy Festival and Events producer. And our panel discussion today is the second in a series on opportunities for regional filmmakers in the UK. So in our November Lab, we dived into the various national and regional talent development schemes that have been set up to help young writers and directors with funding advice and networking advice and also training. And we also covered a lot of practical advice on developing local connections, getting involved in local projects, and thriving as regional filmmakers. If you missed our November Lab and you're a regional filmmaker, writer, director, I would highly recommend that you watch it. It's available on the BFI YouTube channel, and we'll post a link to it shortly in the chat box, but do give it a watch. Today, we'll be discussing early career opportunities within production companies across the UK, but outside London. So our panelists will spotlight regional companies that offer exciting traineeships, internships, work experience, and entry-level opportunities for new talent in TV, in feature film, commercials, everything scripted and unscripted. And following our panel discussion today, we'll be hosting one of our virtual networking sessions again. So you'll get a chance to meet other regional filmmakers here, talk to each other about your projects, how to get involved in local projects, and also maybe advantages and disadvantages of being based outside London. That session starts at 2:30 today, and you can still sign up for it until 2:00. So we'll post the link to the registration page now in the chat box. You have until 2 p.m. to register if you want to attend that. And if you're unable to attend that today, then we still have our Facebook networking group that we set up for all of you to talk to each other. So do join that. Introduce yourselves to each other, share the links to your profiles, portfolios, and so on. Today, we have a couple of Film Academy colleagues working behind the scenes. So we have No, who is managing the chat box and who will be answering your questions in the chat box. Any questions that you have for us, so questions about the BFI, questions about Film Academy, or any questions about our lab series. So feel free to say hi to Noel, introduce yourselves. And then my colleague Zakia will be managing the Q&A box. The Q&A box is on the bottom of your screens, and it's for the questions that you may have for our panelists and our host today. So we'll devote the last 15 minutes of the session to your questions. And today we have Lacey, who are our competition partner and who will be giving away a hard drive at the end of this session. And as usual, we'll be awarding the best question asked. So get your thinking caps on and start asking those questions, but make sure that you put your full names when you are asking questions in the Q&A box so that we know who you are. So if you've registered to participate in the Lacey competition when you were originally signing up to participate in this event, then please do stick around until the very end of this session. That's where we'll be announcing the winner of the competition live. So do stick around, because if you're not around to claim your prize live, we will go on to calling another name. And the only one last thing I want to say is that the session today is being recorded, and the recording will be available on the BFI YouTube channel in a couple of weeks' time. So if you've missed anything today, you can watch it again. And now I'm going to introduce you to your host today, Abana Taylor-Smith. Abana is an award-winning writer and director based in Sheffield, and Abana will introduce you to our lovely panelists. Enjoy the session today.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining. It's really great to see you, hear from you, and just thanks for being here with us in our lockdown 2.0 just about. So yeah, I would love to introduce you to our first panelist, that's Soph Webberley. She's a regional development assistant at Warp Films, and she came to Warp through the Screen Skills High-End TV Skills Fund. We've got Rhys Bebb joining us today, who's the Education and Training Officer for Screen Alliance Wales, which was set up by Bad Wolf TV. We've got Glyn Middleton, Head of Skills at Screen Yorkshire. And we've also got Rachel Robey, producer and co-founder of Wellington Films. Hi guys, thanks for joining.
Hiya.
Hey.
Hi. So I guess the first thing that I'd like to ask you all, if you can all just like pile in and we'll do a bit of a brainstorm. What are the key production companies in the UK outside of London and what do they do? Like who should people know about who are tuning in today?
Shall I jump in?
Yeah.
Shall I jump in?
Yeah, please do.
So given that every TV show you see on Channel 5 these days is filmed in Yorkshire, then I should declare an interest from Screen Yorkshire. But some amazing production companies in Yorkshire, not just Warp, hi Sophie, which are a brilliant company. Other drama companies like Rollum that make The Syndicate, Duck Soup, some brilliant factual companies, my old company True North, Wise Owl, that did a great doc on Bob Marley recently, Canda Productions that makes Catching a Killer and all kinds of other things, Air TV, Helicopter ER, it's an endless list. It's a really rich seam of companies that make a very wide spectrum of programs.
And we've got a growing sector here in Wales. So what we're coming across is sort of, obviously I represent sort of Screen Alliance Wales, and we're sort of very much tied in with Bad Wolf Studios. But the fact is, we also are working with obviously the BBC, producing things with sort of obviously the Doctor Who casualties that are based there. At Bad Wolf, we've recently had sort of industry. Obviously, His Dark Materials is our main sort of flagship series. But we're also working just over in Newport. We've got sort of urban myth films, which we're working on, War of the Worlds. We've got sort of, obviously within Wales as well, we've got sort of the Welsh broadcasting sector with S4C. So we've got a host of different broadcasting companies that produce content both for S4C and for other channels across the UK. So we're sort of quite excited with our sort of hub that's growing within South Wales and trying to expand that out to the rest of the country. Over sort of a very positive future.
Well, I mean, I think in terms of individual production companies, it's quite interesting to look at some of the recent lists that have come out of companies in the UK working in film. So I think on the Screen International Brit 50 list, which was a couple of years ago, I think in terms of English companies, Warp, obviously, ourselves at Wellington Films, and Hurricane Films were the three English companies who were listed on that list. Obviously, there were other companies in the nations, in Wales and Scotland. And I also think it's worth looking at the lists of the BFI Vision awardees, you know, because that's often newer companies who are really open to working with new entrants. People like Anna Griffin, my old colleague at Wellington Films, she has Griffin Pictures, or Lauren Dunn's De Laval Films working out of Manchester. There's all sorts of really interesting up-and-coming companies based outside, I mean, in England, I'm specifically saying, but outside of London, I think.
Thanks very much. So I was wondering, in terms of like ways of getting in, can you guys tell us a little bit about how people can get involved with production companies? Because sometimes, like, until the point when you're actually like involved with them, working on a production or like being hired for some kind of thing, it can seem like a closed shop. So what are those like first steps that people can take for those like early roles?
I think that's something that sort of we are very much, I mean, this is what Screen Alliance Wales set up by Jane Tranter. This obviously sort of the person who set up Bad Wolf, was that she wanted to sort of make the most of the talent that was existing, sort of that she'd been working with when she first brought Doctor Who to South Wales. So it's very much our sort of aim is to kind of set up traineeships with sort of the various companies. Obviously, we've set up trainees to work with sort of the productions his Dark Materials and Discovery of Witches in industry taking place there. But we've also contributed to other things such as sort of The Watchmen, which was filmed up in North Wales. So our sort of main raison d'etre really is to sort of to identify traineeships with a range of different production companies in sort of Wales, and so it's definitely sort of where we're coming from is we do post opportunities on our website. It is about working and identifying avenues for supplying a workforce of the future that actually, as much as possible, is trying to reflect the population and trying to we're actually targeting people who maybe wouldn't have considered TV and film as a career in the past, and it's about sort of reaching out and so just basically making the sort of the pool sort of talent a richer one, because rather it's by extending the barriers out into sort of other areas.
I mean, from my point of view, at Screen Yorkshire, we're trying to push everyone in the right direction. There are some training schemes within Screen Yorkshire, and from those that we work with, we lead on the Centre of Screen Excellence Yorkshire, which is teaching 5 different craft courses, which is Screen Skills funded. We have a diversity scheme called Beyond Brontes, and both of those are getting placements where they're possible in lockdown. We're getting placements, and that's getting experience, that's getting you in front of people. The golden rule here is about how you can make yourself noticed, how you can get in front of someone. That's the hardest thing, I think, is how do you get into to show what you have? Because believe me, at my old company at True North, we would sit there with a stack of CVs, that were up to the ceiling. We need to know who it is that shines, who's most committed, who's watching TV, who can talk TV, who's interested and curious in the world around them. So there's a combination. There are some training schemes, but partly direct action, how you contact those companies and how you force your way in. Those companies, those opportunities will be largely based on the productions and commissions that they get. There are very few staff jobs that are there come what may. It's based on the amount of work that they have. So it's a combination of the two. Look out for the training schemes, but do your homework, do your research. In Yorkshire, there aren't thousands of companies, not like in London. There's a fairly limited companies. You have to get to know them. You have to work out who they are and what they do and watch them, and make sure that you're prepared and forcing your way when the opportunity comes.
Yeah, I mean, I really echo what Glyn said there. In fact, I'd written down something very similar to say, so I won't go over it again. I think, the industry has really changed since I joined the industry in the late 90s, a long time ago, where there really wasn't an internet, back then, and companies didn't even have websites. So back then it was all about finding the opportunities. And if I found an opportunity, I might be the only person who had found that opportunity. So it was really about finding my own way in that sense. But now I think it's about how you present yourself to that company and how you choose, what information you choose to send, what you think is important about your experience, and maybe like the tone of the email that you send. Is it too formal? Is it too chatty? What do you think is going to appeal to that company? And just to echo what Glyn said, I really think it's about a 2-pronged attack. One, finding out who is on your doorstep and what kind of films or television programs they make. And if you go to meet them, make sure you've seen their work. I don't think you need to be, go overboard on this, like as if that's the only television you've ever watched in your whole life, because we all know that's perhaps not true. But having seen some of their work, if they've just recently won an award, congratulating them on that, making sure that you know a bit about that company and know what might appeal to them, but also really being alive to what's going on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. I mean, that's certainly where we advertise our opportunities, making sure that you are there to apply for those opportunities, because often not that many people apply. If we apply for a paid runner's job, we're lucky if we get 20 applications, So, making sure that you apply is also really important.
Okay, just one thing on top of that, Rachel. Don't pretend that you've watched programs if you haven't. I've got plenty of examples of students that I've taught who've gone, one of them went to Daisybek Studios, got kicked out halfway through an interview because she was pretending that she'd watched the Yorkshire Vet, and she hadn't, she was guessing. And guess what? The people who make it kind of know that detail. So make sure that you're being honest about it.
Yeah, just to add as well, like, I think if you're new to the industry and stuff, it's really easy to be put off if you have no industry experience. You can be like, oh my gosh, I've never done a runner's job before, like, of course they're never going to take me on. But even if you've worked like as a waitress, or if you've worked in a bar or done anything that's customer service, it basically echoes what a runner is. If you've got good people skills and you know how to make a decent cup of tea, I'm sure that you'd be the perfect person for jobs. So just never get put off if you feel like you don't have years experience.
Soph, I was wondering, can you tell us a bit more about the Screen Skills High-End TV Skills Fund? Because that ties in to what you were saying.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't have to go through an application process, not because I was like a lucky one, but I basically was in my 3rd year of university and I adored everything about Warp. I was obsessed with This Is England and Dead Man's Shoes. I was like, oh my God, what a dream. I'd love to work there. And I sent them an email with my CV and just asked them if they did internships or if I could just come for a week's work experience. Luckily, the production supervisor there, who's called Kat Marshall, she picked that up and was like, I can give you an interview, you can come down for a couple of weeks and, have a taste of what it's like here. But because I was going into my final year of uni, I was like, maybe I should wait, which was really weird because, it's Warp. I should have just took that opportunity. But I stayed in touch with Kat for months and I was really persistent. I'd like email every month just to check in, see how she was, how the company were, everything like that. And then I think the year later, I asked her if internships were still a thing because I was preparing to leave uni. And Warp had decided that they didn't want to take interns on anymore for a long period of time because they felt like, not paying them wasn't the best thing to do. They wanted someone to come in and do the job full time, earning money. And so they paired up with Screen Skills to offer this opportunity, luckily for me, a couple of years ago, to just come in and be an in-house runner. So I kind of just got through into the deep end straight away, with the help of Screen Skills and Warp, kind of nurturing me and teaching me the ropes straight away, basically on my first day. So it's not like the typical way. Like I didn't go through an application process, but I did go through an interview process. I did have to meet everyone in the company. Had frequent calls with like Screen Skills to check in. So yeah, that was my kind of route into Warp.
Thank you. What was that application process like for the Screen Skills like platform itself? I know that you already had like a connection with Warp and everything, but how did you get involved with Screen Skills?
I think Screen Skills are really interested in giving people who are from more disadvantaged backgrounds and lower family income and things like that, people that aren't don't have these opportunities in their cities. I feel like Screen Skills always offer a scheme for people like that, and for boosting up diversity in the industry and stuff. So I think Screen Skills are really eager to work with Warp, obviously Warp being at the state as it is in the UK, bringing someone on that kind of represents what Warp are about, which is about people out of London, I guess, because Warp are a northern company, people who are from disadvantaged backgrounds, who are working class, and so I think I personally don't know the conversation that they had with Warp, but I'm guessing it was something like, we need someone who represents what we want to represent in our company. So yeah, I'm guessing that's how it went.
Thanks. So in terms of like production companies themselves, again, like if you're outside, it can be quite difficult to know like what even are the early level roles that can be done within a production company. So we've talked about runner. I was wondering, like, can you guys again just like pile in what are the roles that are available? And I know that there can be a variety, particularly in Wellington, Rachel. I know that you've had like a lot of different early level like training schemes available for people to come in and join you guys.
Yeah, so I mean, Wellington, we are a tiny company. I mean, at the core of it is myself and my husband and one colleague. Because our other colleague, Anna, has just got a Vision Award and has set up her own production company, which is brilliant, you know, and a real testament to her, because she started with us as a runner 10 years ago, funded through what was then the Future Jobs Fund, which we're really pleased actually is now being relaunched as the Kickstarter jobs creation scheme, actually after 10 years. But Anna was with us for 10 years and has now set herself up as a fully fledged BFI Vision Awardee, which is brilliant. But for us, there's a real difference between what we can do from our core company business and then what we can do when we're in production. So in terms of our core business, we would often have an assistant, but only when it's funded by something like Sween Skills or the Future Jobs Fund or the new Kickstarter job creation scheme. And that's because we are a teeny tiny company with very, very, very limited resources from day to day. But with the new Kickstarter project, which we're hoping to get approved in the new year, we're hoping to have a series of 6-month fixed-term contracts where we will always have a Kickstarter person with us, and we will try and open that opportunity up as widely as possible. We're hoping we might even be able to offer some relocation grants for those outside of our region. But then when we're in production, we always try and have a range of departmental trainees, and they would either be funded by Sween Skills through their trainee finder, or through local universities where we offer kind of proper supported linked placements through the academic institutions, or we would pay those trainees from the budget at national minimum wage. But that tends to be how we work. And I've been really interested in the last year, because I actually teach at NFTS North, Glyn. I lead the production assistant course. And from my students last year, a large number of them have worked every single day since that course finished as COVID runners. And like, although the pandemic is clearly horrific and has changed everything, it has in a small way opened up a new opportunity for new entrants, because there are COVID runners who need to have less experience than perhaps other production runners or other roles on set. So in a way, COVID has also opened up opportunities for people as well as, you know, closing things down.
I think if I can jump in, I mean, the course that Rachel's talking about is the Centre of Screen Excellence, which is Screen Skills funded. NFTS leads teach, and it's in conjunction with a couple of local colleges. And it's one of the ways it came about because we were trying to identify gaps. And you might think sitting there, everyone sitting at home, there are no gaps, it's impossible to get in. Actually, there are gaps. There are gaps, specific gaps that we try to identify and then fill. So in this case, PAs, grips, hair and makeup, costume, lighting, and that course specifically tries to tackle that. Obviously, there's no shortage in a way of runners, and to some extent technical assistants, edit assistants and whatever, and you have to battle harder to get into those. But going back to the placements and the internships, you know, I think everyone in the industry is very conscious that you want a level playing field, and you don't want to make it available just to those whose mums and dads can afford to pay for you to be there through the summer. And the Beyond Brontes course that we run, we pay for those internships. We find you placements within companies like True North and Daisy Beck, and there are one at the moment is on the Syndicate, the Roland Productions, and we pay for that. And that's the only way I think you can guarantee a level playing field. So everyone is trying very hard, I think, to make that. But yeah, I personally, I think it's all to do with the success of you getting in out of London is about you building a relationship with that indie. And Soph said, you know, I was very persistent. You need persistence. You don't need to give up quickly. Those who give up quickly don't belong in any production company, because that's not what you do as a job. So it's that combination. Make yourself noticed, but work very hard on the companies that there are. I'd be knocking at Rachel's door.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to sort of build on sort of what Glyn said, and sort of really, you'd be surprised. I mean, we do a lot with schools about educating people about really pushing back what people think the roles that are part of the sort of the TV and film industry. Rachel mentioned about we've had a couple of trainees now that have come on as COVID assistants. You know, it's highlighted the importance of health and safety within any kind of production. It's important, highlighted the importance of insurance, you know, because that was actually the main stumbling block, which a lot of productions that we knew were having wasn't a lot of the other logistics. It was the insurance. It was a financial issue. So there's all these skill sets that are really important. And as Glyn said, it's the fact that if you are more aware, the more you know about the different departments and the different roles within the industry, then you might find those niches where there may be a shortage. You know, there may be sort of places as well. I think it's really important that we did a virtual networking session recently whereby we're doing about interview techniques, and one of the exec producers from Bad Wolf was saying, I get so many people who say they want to work in TV. And it kind of, again, feeding back on what Glyn said, the more focused you can be and sort of, you know, be direct and have an idea of what you want to do, then, you know, finding what, and, you know, it's not sugarcoating about working in the industry. There's lots of challenges going to be, but the more that you really find something that resonates with your passions, you know, if you're really sort of, you want to work in sort of set design, then, you know, there's you know, find, you know, the things to be inspired by, and really kind of channel your passion. And as I say, these things complement each other, and you might find a niche which is sort of, you know, you still go to schools and people don't know what Foley artists are, and yet they kind of, you know, sound is such a sort of elevating factor. When we've seen so young people's productions, it's so often that's the benchmark of a higher productions where somebody's got the sound right. Because we're all very fortunate, the cameras are in our pockets and great, but it's just about getting that sort of next level, and these sort of are things which really elevate the production. So I think it's more about identifying all the different things that contribute to a production, and not just, you know, I'm definitely sort of a runner, vital role, but they're all sort of part of the process.
And just to follow on from what Rhys said, and this is my really very genuinely held belief, is that the film industry and the television industry is like a huge ecosystem. And if you love the industry, like the first thing to work out is whether you love the industry, because it's quite a tough industry to be sometimes. So if you can kind of inveigle your way in, and you're absolutely right, you have to have a clear idea of what you're going for job-wise. Like if somebody says, what do you want to do? And you're like, well, I'll do anything. Like, how can I help you? You know, so but when you get in, you then have to have a really big look around you and work out all of the different jobs that there are going on. You know, I started in the sound department, bizarrely, actually, following on from what Rhys was just saying. You know, I thought I wanted to be a sound recordist, but when I went in and I did that job, it wasn't for me at all, but I loved the industry. And then I went into production, and when I went into that department, I just felt like I'd gone home, you know. Place, you know, within the film industry, not only are there producers, directors, writers, there are carpenters, there are caterers, there are drivers, there are art department assistants, there's Foley, you know, there's working in distribution and marketing and publicity. You know, there's a huge ecosystem out there, and the key is to make sure that you love the industry. And if you do, so it's some weird light on, if you do, I'm certain that you will find the department that suits you. And I don't mean anything to do with like who you are or how you look. I mean your skills, your personality, how you like to work, what you find interesting, what your passions are. And you find that, and then you will never look back. You know, that is my genuinely held belief.
Can I just say, when I was working at a university a couple of years ago, I did a study. I brought all of the indies in from Yorkshire that I could find who would come in, and I asked them what they wanted. What qualities they wanted, and I ended up with a 7-page document. Oddly, it was 2.5 pages in before we got out of what I would call soft skills. No one was asking for specific technical skills. First and foremost, they were looking for personality, for character, for interest, for those who watched programs and content and wanted to talk about and were obsessed by it, for those who would go the extra mile and turn up at weekends and were collaborative and wanted to work in a team. All of those came first. They look, in my experience, employers look for personality and character first. They think they can teach you the skills as you go on, and you, as Rachel says, you have to get some of that personality into your CVs and cover letters, otherwise you won't ever make it to the shortlist.
I genuinely think actually that the cover letter, like on the course that I lead at, in Leeds, we do a lot of work on a CV, which doesn't need to have that much on it. You just need to pick out what's relevant. As Soph says, if you're a barista, that can be incredibly helpful to a production company. If you've done anything with crowd control, if you've done any kind of security work or film festival work where you're dealing with members of the public, all of these skills are really vital and can build up a brilliant CV with very little film experience on it. But the letter that you send, the email, the covering letter, that's what gets somebody to open your CV. And for me, it's not too formal. It sounds like it needs to have like conversational language, as if I'm having a conversation with that person. And it will almost certainly start, "Hi, Rachel." It won't start, "Dear Sir" or "Madam" or anything more formal. And it would be, a little hint into that person's life and their personality, why they want to work for me, what they bring to it, what experience they would like to draw my attention to, and then I'll look at the CV and I'll know that they're not going to have, they can say to me, "I haven't had any experience, but this is what I think I bring to the table," and that will almost certainly get me to open that CV. And ideally, I'd meet that person for coffee over Zoom or in real life, perhaps, and then go from there.
I think just to add to that, it's a question of knowing who you're applying from, because I know sort of occasionally, because we work with multiple production companies, we have productions which we're advertising posts with now, which are still not made public so you don't have the opportunity to know exactly who's going to be reading it. Which is sort of can be a bit of a bugbear. But then I think that comes down to sort of doing your research in terms of locations where people have tried to second guess and sort of and I guess at least it illustrates that people are sort of thinking and sort of trying to sort of to try and do their research and try and sort of get into their heads into the industry. And it's certainly something which I think, as I say, it's important that you are passionate about it and you stick with it, because there's no one formula that will ultimately work. But definitely it's the soft skills. We would sort of, that's part of the reason why we're pushing, trying to get out and trying to echo the sort of the things that screen skills do. As Soph said about getting out to getting out to a more diverse range of the population, because in a lot of cases the hard qualifications aren't what's the industry's looking for. They're looking for adaptability and sort of, I was talking to somebody at a FX studio in Cardiff, and they were saying, well, you might be brilliant on working on one software package, but you might come out of university, go into the studio, 6 months later you have to adapt, and so there's new sort of techniques coming out, sort of the definitions of sort of departments are so constantly evolving as production methods change, and then there are also, as Rachel found, opportunities then to move within sort of the industry once you're there.
One of the things that used to drive me mad getting CVs at True North was if the CVs and the cover letters assumed that you were going to take them on as a director or a producer or an editor. It was so naive, the idea that you thought that you were going to go in at that level, that those would go in the bin. I want to see a sense of ambition in a CV. I want to know that eventually that's what you want to do, but you need to be sufficiently self-aware to know that you have to start in a junior role and show your abilities and work your way up. That was a sure way for me of knocking CVs on the head if people were 3 years ahead of where they should be.
I also think that you have to think about what you're applying for, you know, and I often, you know, lots and lots of people are directors that have made amazing short films. But if I'm interviewing somebody as a production trainee, for example, I want to know that they're going to be there for me on the shoot, and they're not going to be constantly wanting to get off to somewhere else, like set, for example. Like, this is because I'm a production person, so this is like a particular bugbear of mine. You know, if you hire somebody to be in the office, you want to know that at least for this job, this is where they want to be. You know, and okay, you can learn about their ambitions as the job unfolds, and it's really nice to hear that and maybe look at their work. You know, for the job that they're going to be doing, you want to know that's really what they want to do. So they either have to be able to convey that to me, even if it's maybe not quite true, or they, you know, they have to sort of put those ambitions maybe to one side just for the duration of that job, because otherwise they'll almost certainly not do a good job for me, and then that reduces my ability to rehire them or to recommend them for other things, you know. Following on from that, what are some of the differences that you've noticed in terms of work experience or early like paid opportunities in independent production companies such as yourselves, or with people who are wanting to go into more big studio productions? And is there a difference, or is it kind of a similar playing field? I mean, I think anybody else jump in if you want to answer this. I think there is a real difference, actually. Talking in terms of film for a second, I think if you want to go into the really huge movies, you know, the big, huge American studio pictures that are shooting, you know, around the outskirts of London, I think that the jobs on those films are really structured. You know, you go in and there's a very, very, very specific job description that goes with each assistant or each PA that they have in the various departments on the films. And often you will have to have had some experience to get those roles, and you have to perhaps be ready to conform to quite a rigorous job description. Like on smaller films, you can be working in all different areas. You can be on set, off set, you know, you can be asked to like go and take messages to people, you can be asked to go and buy stuff. You know, it can be very, very varied on smaller films, and I actually think they're brilliant for that. You know, you get to know everybody. Whereas on a big film, you might be very, very siloed in one department. You won't meet anybody. You may not even see at camera, you know, because you wouldn't be allowed on set. There'll be layers of, you know, different sort of tiers of departments before you get to the kind of nexus of the core sort of set operations. But so I think it's all really about what you want to do. And I think if you want to get onto those bigger films, there's a different sort of strategy for getting there. You know, you might have needed to do a day or two as a locations marshal on a studio shoot. You know, you will have to have got the seat. You know, there's definitely a different. I think there's definitely a different sort of pathway to those bigger projects than the independent ones. How different? Well, I mean, you know, I think certainly my experience is all in the independent sector. So if I was, you know, talking to people who've cracked those big movies, they have often known somebody, and I don't know any other way to put it. They will often, maybe they don't know them personally, but they will somehow get to find somebody who can get their CV to the right person. I don't mean like they have to have like family friends on that bigger movie, but I think they have to do more to try and find a connection with the right person who can take them on. I think there's a less open applications process. You know, I see very few of those jobs advertised on Twitter. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think those jobs are like gold dust, and you have to make it like a very, very a big focus of yours to get your CV to the right person, and then try and meet. You know, I think it's a slightly different process. I mean, is that what you? I think
it also leads you on into an associated area for that. I've always felt I've spent 5 years in London in 32 years. The rest has been outside of London. And what that experience suggested to me is that one of the greatest qualities you need is versatility. Because if you're only working across 20-25 companies in Yorkshire and that area, and you want to stay there and you don't want to go to Bristol or London or Manchester or whatever it is, to work across those companies, 1 week you'll be working, and my old company True North. One week you would be working on junior vets for CBBC, the next week you'd be on a panorama. The week after that, be on Say Yes to the Dress. After that, you'll be in Mallorca for A New Life in the Sun. And if you can show that you are adaptable and versatile, and you can work across those productions, you've got an advantage that others aren't. My experience in London is that that companies are more. You go to a more of a current affairs company or a history making company or whatever. It's not quite so broad, such a broad church, I think.
I mean, if I could cover this, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, following on in terms of actually something you touched upon is the fact that when I think working with smaller companies is a good pathway in, because from my experience when we've worked with larger companies, then I think having a good understanding of set etiquette is beneficial with smaller companies before you start. If you want to work with a larger company, that's essential. You need to know about sort of, that's sort of, if it comes to working with sort of a larger sort of company, then I think there's certain things that you would be hoping that people will be aware of in terms of behavior on set, the whole concept of, obviously you sign an NDA when you start anyway, but it's the scrutiny goes up. There's sort of everybody within the whole production is expected to behave in a certain way with the larger productions, given the sort of like the everything that's tied in with the logistics of it. I mean, his Dark Materials had about 300 people working on it. It was quite a large production as TV went, but it still pales in significance in terms of the projects that that Rachel was talking about. These large ones, you're talking massive things, and the sort of the rule set of kind of everything involved is just mind-boggling.
I mean, I think it's true. Like, what I do think is, so thinking about your CVs again for a second. So I was helping somebody with their CV last year, and I thought their CV was brilliant because they had on it a couple of bits and pieces that they'd done as a production assistant. So I think they'd worked on a music video in Yorkshire, for example, and they'd done like another short film. They'd got a couple of little things, and it was just a day here and a day there, but they'd been really specific about how they'd explained what they'd done on those shows. And then they'd got experience in like a corporate environment. They'd been like, they'd worked for a bank. And I actually thought for bigger movies, that CV would be quite attractive because they'd got some experience, but they also showed that they could exist within a slightly more structured corporate environment. So I actually thought their CV looked really good. And going into it, they were really like, oh, why would anybody care about this office experience that I have? And I was saying, well, that shows that you can manage confidential material, that you can work in that corporate environment. So I actually think that was quite good for their CV. So often, you've got skills, and it's all about how you showcase them on your CV. Actually, I think
another one of the big unspoken CV skills is a driving license that doesn't often get advertised, but like knowing from bitter experience as well, like if you have the opportunity to learn to drive, like please just learn to drive. One of the things I want to highlight for everyone is that I think it's Creative Skill Set have a driver's license bursary fund. So what you should do is, try and organise a way to book in some lessons. It has to be done retrospectively. You can't apply for the fund prospectively, but basically you have to sort your lessons out, sort your instructor, have a receipt and all of that kind of thing. And I believe you can apply for this bursary fund and you get financial assistance to pay for lessons, because oftentimes that is a barrier to access. But it's also like not having a driver's license oftentimes is a barrier to access within a production company. And just from my own experience, like I've been on productions that have kind of shot in the middle of nowhere, and if you can't drive and you're relying on like a rural public transport system to get you somewhere for 6 a.m, that's a lot of Ubers, and it's very expensive. It's a complete nightmare, and you're kind of like at the mercy of local transport, or somebody being really nice and giving you a lift. And it's just like a very, like it's kind of unfair, to be honest, to say like you can't have this job that you're perfectly capable of doing without being able to drive. But I do believe like having a license would make it easier for actually getting around whilst trying to do that job.
Well, yeah, 100%. 100%. We have all of like the 20 years that we've been making projects. I think we've had one that was one place where we shot in a warehouse that was easily accessible by public transport. And it's also, you know, the hours can be quite unsociable, and you know, you don't necessarily like to think of you know, newer entrants to the film industry working a full day and then trawling their way home on public transport late at night on their own when they're tired, you know. So certainly from a care point of view, it always prefer to work with somebody who can get themselves to and from set safely. But also, I think when you're taking up opportunities, quite often an opportunity comes up where you need to be somewhere the next day, you know. So for example, say you were trying to get on a bigger picture and it's outside of your area, your region, your geographical area. The person phoning you up saying, can you come tomorrow and be a locations marshal, and you need to be at this location at like 6:30 in the morning tomorrow, they want to know that you're going to be there. You know, if there's any doubt in their mind about whether or not you can get yourself to that place, they won't hire you, because they can't take the risk that you won't be there. And so your ability to say, I'll be there, and have that agility, you know, that really, really stands people apart in my experience. So last year, for example, I took some trainees from a local university onto a Film 4 funded short film, all officially through the university. They had coursework deadlines, it was going to contribute to their course and what have you. But the camera trainee, I phoned him and said, can you be in Hastings, you know, far away from where he lives tomorrow? And he said, I'm there, just tell me where I need to be. And it was so refreshing to have that. Not like, can I get there a bit later because it's short notice? It was like, I am there. Wherever you need me, I will be there. And I know that that person has pretty much worked every day since that job, because they had that front-footed attitude, you know, to get themselves to where they needed to be.
And it's not only the need for a driving license to work on locations. Sometimes the companies are not based in the centre of a city. You know, Air Television that we work with, based out in an airfield in North Yorkshire. They met helicopter ER and 999 rescue squad and bangers and cash and all kinds of things. And if you're a trainee, you've got an advantage if you have a driving license, because they're out in the wilds and you have to get there. It's not even before you've even set off filming. So you have an advantage. It is definitely an advantage. If you're university students, tell your tutors to sort something out. When I was at Leeds Trinity, I sorted out a scheme where I approached loads of driving instructors and got them to offer discounts for students. You know, you can do it. It just takes a bit of thought sometimes. It is important, and I know a lot of students say to me, "Well, it doesn't matter because I'm not 25," and they're not going to ask me to. Actually, it does. It does matter for all the reasons that have been outlined.
And the fact that sort of then it's something we have to clarify with every trainee, is the fact that we do try and clarify as much as possible, sort of to say that, you know, this job will require sort of driving, but the additional thing of making sure you've got the business thing on your insurance as well. And sort of unfortunately, the insurance system is out to catch people out as much as possible, but so it's make sure and that you've got that sort of provision on your sort of car insurance. You're allowed to drive for business purposes.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting now that insurers have got a bit more friendly towards the film industry. Like 15, 20 years ago, I couldn't get car insurance. Like I literally couldn't get it. But now we have no problem getting business use cover on our car, and it's no more expensive really than the policy would have normally been. But what I should say is I don't think you should ever be asked to drive actors around in your car, even with business use cover. Because that business use cover is for you to drive to and from work and to do like errands in your car, like taking a parcel or a package. But I don't think you should ever be asked to drive like obviously everybody is of high value, but I mean a specifically high value person to that production. You shouldn't be put in that position on a job where you're asked to put them in your car. You know, at the very least, it should be a rental car with specific insurance that covers that person. So that's just one thing to be aware of. Even with business use cover, I don't think you should be asked to drive around the stars of the show.
So I was wondering, to kind of finish off, can you tell us about some of the things that you've been working on with your individual production companies, and like the exciting things that you've got going on, and anything else that just comes to mind about how people can get involved with you and keep in touch with what you're doing in the future?
Well, I think ourselves obviously very much is about sort of for pushing down the education path, but we've already sort of got sort of a COVID awareness course that we're doing, and we're looking to sort of develop some additional courses which tie in with what I've talked about in terms of the set etiquette, giving guidance on for people coming into runner roles. We've identified people who just want to give the tips and things that can be knowing about the correct procedure for how to shred a document, and sort of which documents, if you are asked to shred a script, it has to go in a certain shredder, so that these things are sort of highly sort of confidential, and also sort of giving people advice on sort of courses so that you can add to your CV. In terms of finance, that how, because you're going to be working as a freelancer, you're going to know how to sort of record your sort of your earnings over the course of a year. That you are savvy in terms of how sort of rates about, in terms of thinking about sort of holiday pay and things like that, which you might not necessarily think of, and all these things which will benefit people looking for work in terms of having a bit more experience. But then also you'll have that to add to your CV, so that you're identifying yourself as somebody who has done the research and be able to sort of point these things out. We're very fortunate. We've got a classroom down at Bad Wolf Studios, Wales. But obviously with the COVID, we're sort of just trying to reintroduce that in terms of how we get people sort of back in, but we're looking to sort of share sort of as much as we can virtually nowadays with different education facilities. But that's where we're going from a Screen Alliance Wales perspective.
Soph, how about you with Warp?
So just to give everyone just a brief overview, because I know this is aimed at like 16 to 25-year-olds. I'm 24, so like I'm in that age group. And when I joined Warp, which was 2 years ago, we were just starting to work on the screen adaptation of Everybody's Talking About Jamie, which is the musical that is set in a working class estate in Sheffield, about a boy who wants to go to his prom in a dress. So it's just this really fun musical with loads of drag queens and stuff like that. I started working on that as soon as I started Warp, and we did like a whole street casting process, and we're handing out flyers on the streets, just getting like kids who have never been in films or anything like that before to see if they'd be interested. So I was doing that for maybe a good year. We were trying to cast the film, and then doing various other things on other projects that we had going on. And it wasn't till maybe this year or the end of last year I made a pitch document for us to send out to like other companies to see if they wanted to make the TV show we were working on. And it was just loads of images, loads of image research about like the 60s and the 70s. And that enabled me to get into the role that I do now, which is obviously working in development and stuff. And that means day to day it's reading scripts, giving feedback. Like I could list everything I do. I feel like it's a range and it's different every single day. But yeah, so obviously because of COVID and stuff, luckily we were in post-production when COVID hit with the musical and stuff, so we've been able to kind of do okay, and that's coming out in February. But we've just taken a whole break on everything, had a look at our development slate and a look in, what we need more of, what we feel like Warp is good at doing, which, I feel like we're quite a bold company and we like having fresh perspectives on different things, representing different cultures, different parts of the UK, trying to be international, all that type of stuff. So we've taken this opportunity to kind of look at our development slate and just get new exciting projects on board. So I feel like the future is really looking really nice at the moment, for like the film industry and stuff so far. So yeah, that's what I've been doing and Warp.
Cool. And then at Wellington, happily, we wrapped a feature production on March the 5th this year, which is like perhaps the first time in our history we've been on the right side of anything, because normally speaking, we're totally on the wrong side of things date-wise. So we literally wrapped on March the 5th and just post-produced through lockdown 1 of an interactive project, a fully interactive branching narrative project called As Dead as It Gets, which is for a global platform called What If I, which is available on iPhone, which stars Michael Socker and is super, super fun. It's like probably the most light-hearted, fun thing we've ever produced, because we normally make like really quite hard-hitting, grim, fictional films that come with trigger warnings, you know. So As Dead as It Gets is probably, despite its title, the most fun thing we've ever produced, which is brilliant. But like Soph says, we've spent the whole of the lockdown really refocusing our slate. Like, we've sort of approached everything with a kind of Marie Kondo approach of like, does it spark joy? And if it doesn't spark joy, we've taken the view that perhaps we're not going to spend time on it. And so we're hoping to shoot a new feature next year, in early summer, although that's likely to be overseas, which makes things a bit more complicated for us in terms of COVID. But yeah, I mean, in terms of what I would say is, I think, like, I knew nobody when I wanted to enter the industry, you know, and neither did my partner or any of the people who we count as our industry, like friends and colleagues. You know, we all came in from the outside and we all managed it, you know, and there's nothing remotely special about us. You know, we are just, you know, average. I'm a working class person. I'm from Burton-on-Trent, you know, and I managed to inveigle my way into this industry, you know, and I truly, truly believe that with determination and the right approach, you can do it. And in terms of Wellington, we're going to hopefully be advertising a Kickstarter role, which is for people outside of full-time education who are 18 to 24 years of age, as far as I know. And we'll be hopefully advertising that 6-month position in January. So keep an eye on our social media feeds for that, because we really want a wide range of people to apply.
I mean, at Screen Yorkshire, we're not making productions, but our job is to liaise with the indies that are, and we're really pleased with the range, and we're thrilled to see the Jamie film coming out early next year. The big one for us, Screen Yorkshire does invest in some productions, one of which was All Creatures Great and Small, which was an enormous hit for Channel 5. And it's an interesting one, because that's a company that's not in Yorkshire, that's Playground, but lots of companies want to film in Yorkshire and come and film our brilliant backdrops and locations. So we launched a crew database that helps them find people to work on it, and that's been really successful as well. But All Creatures Great and Small, it'll be filming early next year. Most recently, we've been working with the BBC to help on some projects for a series called Northern Voices, which is working with some local indies where they've got commissions. And the big achievement in lockdown for us, I think, was we managed to persuade the local LEP to stump up £250,000 to help development costs of companies around Yorkshire, because we were concerned that they were going to struggle so much, and that was a good way of helping them. And I think we helped something like 15 or 16 different companies get money to put into development that will dig them out of that. So that's what we've been focusing on.
Okay, well, thank you so much, guys. It's been really, really informative. I think it's about time we take some audience questions. So just to kick us off, I've got a question here from Lorena Ivanovic. She says, what advice would you give to people with a disability living outside of big cities? Sorry, let me just make this full screen so I can see. Living outside of big cities. I'm a filmmaker from East Cheshire and have been applying as a runner for over a year. I've found most runner roles require a driving licence, which I cannot get due to my disability. I've also found they are based in bigger cities, which I would find it hard to get to without moving. I think Lorena might mean moving like house. But yeah, what would you say, guys?
I think that I really feel for this person, because I think, you know, it's a really tricky situation, isn't it, when you really want to work in an industry and there are barriers to your being mobile and able just to, you know, trolley off down the road. I would start off by looking for things that I could do from my house. You know, I would be looking perhaps for research opportunities or other bits and pieces, and it could be like, I don't want to say for sure, but it could be that at the moment with COVID, there might be more of those opportunities around. You know, there might be more opportunities. My camera's doing something really weird. There might be more opportunities to work remotely and to be able to undertake some work from where this person is based, at least as a starting point, you know, for them to start being able to build up their CV and their contacts with people. So I would start by trying rather than looking for stuff on the doorstep, I would be looking for stuff nationally that I could do from where I live, I think.
I assume that this person has looked at things like the Channel 4 production trainee scheme, which is very successful. I did some interviewing for that last year, and it is primarily diversity based. I did a lot of interviewing for disabled students on that, and they have a network of 20 or 25 companies around the country who take on, have internships, quite long-term ones. And certainly some of the students that I've worked with got a placement on that. That's one way. It is hard, I totally acknowledge it's harder, particularly for smaller indies, I think, because they're always concerned that they have the right amount of support that they might need for particular disabilities or not. But in my experience, all indies desperately want to be part of that and helpful if they possibly can, but they might need, on occasions, they might need some additional assistance.
I've got another question here, which is for a lot of like recruiting and like hiring managers, if you've got experience of that. One of them is it better, where is it better to keep all video works for portfolio? Personal website, Vimeo, YouTube, or social media? So like when you're looking for people's stuff, yeah, where do you want to see it? All in one place and not necessarily dotted about? And what's helpful for you?
I think it's useful to have things sort of in one place, so that you might be able to browse and sort of have a better sort of feel for the people's content, so you can sort of see sort of other examples. Clearly, I think generally the more sort of, when I've worked with professionals, it tends to be more on Vimeo that the people have put that. I guess it's sort of like there's less ad based, whether that's the reason. But fundamentally, I mean, it's just the same with any form of communication. I mean, at the end of the day, if these things are free, so if you've got the time, put them on all of them. I mean, that sounds a bit sort of excessive, but you just kind of sometimes it's about spinning the chance wheel, and the more spins you have, the better. I know that's a bit kind of, you know.
I mean, for me, I really want the person to direct me towards what they want me to watch. So I don't mind what format it's on, whether it's on YouTube, Vimeo, their own hosted website, or what have you. But I would like the person to put the link to what they want me to watch in the email. And if they want me to watch 3 things, put the 3 links, because the likelihood of me trawling about trying to find that stuff, and if it's a massive, you know, if they've got a huge Vimeo page, which would be fantastic, you know, I might not watch their best work. I might just start with the first one. So I don't mind what platform it's on, you know, I'm not fussy, but I'd like them to direct me to exactly what they'd like me to watch. So I'm not, you know, because I'm likely going to have 10 minutes. You know, that sounds really horrible, but in reality, I've got like a short window of time to spend on it. So if I watch the wrong thing, you know, I won't then watch a second thing necessarily.
Another question here. How do shadowing positions work? What is a good way to ask to shadow a director on set or a producer? And what skills are desired for this position?
Well, currently, work shadowing is not something we're able to at the moment, because sort of the productions have obviously the COVID restrictions. They're trying to limit the number of people on set in general. I think following that, I think work shadowing, I think it's very much echoing what Glyn mentioned earlier. Unless it's a very small production, you're not going to be anywhere near the director we do have work shadowing sort of opportunities that we advertise at different studios that we work with, but it is more just about departments. We find people in different departments rather than roles. It'll be some department based, and you'll have up to 2 weeks. We have an application form which will be reopening sort of in the spring once sort of opportunities and hopefully new productions come into place. But I think it's departments, not roles.
So I've got a question here that I absolutely love, and it says, is there a line between showing interest in working with a particular company you like and being overbearing or too forceful with contacting them? I was just wondering, can you help us kind of like find the kind of grey area between the two? How would that work for you guys?
Yeah, there is a line. It's like, be enthusiastic but not too enthusiastic. Like, there definitely is. And I think my benchmark would be, how would you be with that person in real life? Like, if you tried to have a conversation with somebody and they seemed a bit busy and were like, oh yeah, we'll catch up next week, like, how would you deal with it, like, in a real life situation? Because certainly over the years I've come across the wrong end of this. One, which I was at a film festival and somebody was trying to pass me a CV under the toilet door, and I was a bit like, guys, this is private time, so that was one thing. And then I worked on another show where there was somebody that came into the office who was just a huge fan of a particular film franchise, and they realised that somebody very senior in the production had worked on that franchise, and all they wanted to do was meet that person and ask them about their experience on this big movie. And it was awful, so I definitely think you've got to be on the front foot and keen, but you've got to think, how, if this was my real life and I was going to like interact with this person, how would they want to be interacted with? Like, I think if you send a CV, you don't want to be following up for a couple of months, because you want to be keen, but you don't want to be a pest, because nothing makes me feel worse. So when I feel like I haven't got back to somebody, and the more they pester me, sadly, like the lower down the list they might go. So there's definitely like a balance.
I think if you listen to sort of, you might have actually had an opportunity to hear the people talk, because I know sort of a couple of people from studios in Wales have been involved in a podcast. They might be doing a podcast interview like that. They might have actually said, I know, for example, David Davis, one of the sort of producers on sort of Industry, he did a podcast recently where he said how he would be approached, and he'd be, I'm more than happy if somebody emails me at this address. So if you do your research, they might give you a clue as to how they might be approached.
I think there is definitely a thin line, and it's difficult to advise on where that line is, other than polite but firm. And on the other hand, in the early days of True North, we used to reject everyone who applied for work experience, absolutely everyone, 100%. And we only took on the ones who came back and said, why not? What's wrong with me? Because I thought that was probably the kind of people that I would like in my company, who didn't just accept a no. So there's a balance there, definitely, about you being polite and firm. But I would advise you to go back on a fairly regular basis to indies and say, since I last sent my CV, I've done this. I've had this work experience, so I'm updating my CV. Here you go. The number of times we gave an opportunity to somebody who just happened to be lucky because they'd sent in a CV on that day when we found out we had a new commission, and they were in the top of our minds. And so sometimes it's not fair, sometimes it's just luck. So be firm but polite, and be persistent.
I mean, certainly with us, I have to say, like, if we get CVs in that we like, we then ask those people to apply for the opportunities when they come up. Like, long ago, for us are the days when we just pick somebody off the pile and offer them an opportunity, because we want our opportunities to be widely advertised, and we really want to widen the pool of people that we work with. So if you send a CV to us, the likelihood is if and when opportunities come up, we will just draw your attention to those opportunities so that you can apply for them. because we're trying to be a lot more transparent and just a lot better at recruitment, you know, because we feel like we've got a responsibility to do that.
So I've got another question here that I really like as well, and I'd love if you could like all just give your opinions on this one. It says, you've said that having loads of experience is not essential, but enthusiasm and the ability to work weekends and possibly extra hours are. Do you have any ideas about self-care and taking care of your mental health whilst also showing that you are passionate? How do you keep body and soul together and mind? Because, you know, our mental health is an increasing topic in navigating the film industry, which is a stressful industry.
I think the trainees that we place with Screenlines is that we do set sort of certain guidelines in terms of, you know, that we limit it. That can be inconvenient at times, particularly certain sort of, we had an issue with a trainee who was locations. Well, locations, their particular role is maybe they'll be there before everybody else is there, and they're there afterwards. That's kind of nature of the job. But you just have to kind of, it's a kind of question of working with the department and just making sure. I mean, it is a question of, when we do have trainees, that it's important that they have a support network. We make sure that if there are any questions, they can come ask us, so that they feel embarrassed about asking a question. You know, that they can always ask us, and maybe we can tell them whether you're fine asking that. And so I think it's you know, again, it's about, it's so many of these things about talking and having people to talk to.
I mean, I think also it really comes from the culture that we, like as producers, want to sort of foster on our sorry, my light's really weird. Anyway, I think a lot of it comes down to the culture that we want to foster on our shows. You know, that sense, I think maybe 20 years ago, there was a feeling that people had to be the last person standing. You know, they had to say yes to every task they were asked to do, and they had to be there half an hour before they were called in the morning, the last person out at night. And that's really dangerous, and it's really bad for people's well-being. So certainly when we're working, we really encourage people, if they are tired, and, you know, obviously, like there's a limit to this, as in, you know, but if somebody feels that they can't safely undertake their work, they need to ask us for help, you know, and we might be able to shift the rotas around. We might be able to make sure that there's maybe a staggered start, a staggered end, and we can do stuff. And we will certainly not ask people to drive if they are overtired through their job. Do you know what I mean? Not because they've had like a few late nights. Then we'd be a lot less sympathetic. But we really try and foster an environment where people can ask for help. I mean, that's really important, I think. But I think in people's own lives, you know, they have to build resilience, and that's about having a support network themselves, maybe finding like-minded, you know, friends and colleagues who were maybe at the same point of the industry. I know there's lots of like departmental WhatsApp groups kicking around, you know, where people can sort of like let off steam or ask for advice. And I think things like that are really helpful, like having peers upon whom you can rely as well.
Yeah, just going from it, I think it's crazy that I think still till this day, overworking is like glorified. Like everyone's like wears a badge of honour because they've overworked, and in reality, you know, taking time out and being with your family and your friends virtually now, but whatever, is actually really good for your mental health. I think something that I struggled with personally is like imposter syndrome. I feel like it's big in this industry. I feel like sometimes you might not be appreciated, not because you're genuinely not, it's because like people in the industry are just busy constantly, so you might not get validation. You might feel like you need to be appreciated more, but also that, you know, I think everyone in the industry that I've met so far, even big producers and executives, still feel like that nervous feeling, or that they don't belong. And I think when you are like working class, or if you're a person of colour, or if you're female, or, you know, part of the LGBTQ like community or whatever, there's always going to be a part of you that feels like, do I belong in this industry? Do I belong in this workplace? But just knowing that everyone has been in that situation, and that there are people to talk to, and that, you know, I think even though the film industry is kind of hard at times, it's filled with people who care about other people's stories, hence why everyone works in it. So yeah, I just, you know, take mental breaks, go for walks, be with your family and friends and stuff like that, and do the thing that makes you happy, as well as working and earning a living is really important.
I would just echo that. I think the days when you know, the person who had the biggest balls got the job have gone. Hopefully, I hope they're gone. I think an employer is far more likely to be interested in you if you've got the maturity to be able to handle that situation and ring someone up and someone say, would you mind if I stayed in a local travel lodge tonight because I'm a bit too weary? It will probably be in the risk assessment already anyway, but I think the maturity that you show in doing that stands you in good stead, and it doesn't mean that you're singled out as being too needy. I think that the culture has changed.
I mean, I would like to just add one thing to this, and I think it's really important, is that there's a big difference if you're on a longer job and then if you're going like day to day as a daily. Like, I have definitely had experiences where I've hired somebody as a daily and they finished another job the night before really late on the other side of the country, and they've driven overnight to get to my job, where they've arrived, I think, too tired to safely work. And then their expectation was that at the end of the day, then they would drive home to wherever they live. And I think when you're a freelancer, you know, you are going to take the work where as and when it comes up, but you have a bit of a responsibility as well to make sure that you think about your own health and safety in that sense. So, you know, that always, you know, I never know like quite what I can do in that situation. You know, somebody's turned up with me and I don't think they can safely work, I can't let them work. You know, I can't let them on set if they're too tired, and neither can I let them drive home. But that's also their responsibility. Like, they'll say, no, I'm fine, and off they'll go. And I think, my goodness, I hope they get home. And at the same time, I know that I haven't put them in that position because I didn't ask them to do that. So I think that's where people's own responsibilities start to come into play as well, you know, when they're working days and days on different jobs.
One of the things I wanted to highlight for everyone watching is that they should check out the Film and Television Charity website, because that has got a lot of resources for film and TV professionals, including a free counselling service, which offers like, I think, over the phone counselling and mental health support, which is given out based on an assessment, I think, but you should definitely look into that. And another big part of mental health and stress, particularly as freelancers, can be financial stress and money worries, and they also have a hardship fund as well. So you should look into that. And you know, it's not a perfect system or a perfect solution, but it is one of the options available for helping to fill cracks when they arise. But yeah, that is all we've got time for. Just thank you all of the participants. It's been absolutely fantastic. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Abana. Thank you to our lovely panelists and to all of you who asked so many amazing questions. I'm sorry we were not able to go through all of them. But thank you everyone who interacted. Just before I announce the winner of the Lacey Drive competition, I just wanted to let you know that, as always, we've put together a survey, and we would love it if you could fill it in and let us know what you thought of today's session. This is especially important given that Future Film Festival is coming up in February, so we really want to know what you guys think of our virtual sessions and how we can improve them. You will get an email from Eventbrite with the survey link, but we'll also post it in the chat box shortly as well. And I also wanted to let you know that our January lab will take place on Saturday, the 9th of January, and it will be all about film festivals. So the film festival model has changed quite a bit in 2020. So this discussion will be all about what you can do to adjust your festival strategies for your short films for next year, and how you can use those hybrid virtual film festivals to your advantage as filmmakers. Registrations will open on Monday, the 21st of December for this lab, but we've started a Facebook event. We'll post the link shortly in the chat box. If you guys just want to click on attending, you'll be the first to know when these registrations for our January lab open. And now to announce the winner of the Lacey competition. If you hear your name called, please just write here in the chat box. I'll give you a few seconds to respond, and then I'll move on to calling the next name. So be quick. So the winner of our Lacey Rugged 2 terabyte hard drive is Lorena Ivanovic. Lorena, are you here? Lorena is here. Fantastic. Congratulations, Lorena, for asking the best question in today's session. I will be in touch with you next week about mailing your drive. Thank you, everyone who attended today. Thank you again, our panelists. Thank you, Abana. And I'll see you guys at 2:30 p.m. for our virtual networking session. Bye, everyone.